Tim. We are about to leave on vacation, but before we do, I wanted to do a video about the last couple of books I've read, although starting with Trouble by Lex Croucher, I will say I actually DNF'd this book at 25%. I didn't like any of the characters, and then I realized as I was reading that the author's name was familiar to me because I had read another book by this author earlier this year. I didn't much care for that one either, so I think Lex Croucher just isn't for me. But if you're curious, it is a Regency romance in which a mill worker named Emily disguises herself as a governess to go work for a rich family that she plans to basically steal from and leave. Her sister Amy is ill, and her sister was the one who was supposed to be the governess. Emily has stepped in and is pretending to be Amy, but does not actually plan to stay and, be a governess. Is really just planning to, steal some goods and take off. Like the whole hate the rich thing is very, just very thick here. And then the kind of hodgepodge of servants, because basically this family is actually not that wealthy, and everybody's the house is running on a skeleton crew, and it turns out, the daughters are kind of awful. The lord of the house, in the first 25% you barely see him anyway, but I read some reviews afterwards that he's bisexual, and the oldest daughter is, I guess, trans. And then with the diverse house staff, like from India and one's from Africa, I think, or something. I get the goal for inclusivity, and I'm all for that. I typically love, books that are diverse in these ways, but this just felt very forced, or I don't know. And then to make all these characters just basically unlikable. I'm sure if I stuck it out, maybe the characters get better, but I just didn't like it enough to keep reading, so I put it down and just decided to move on to The Oracle by Juels. I don't know how he says that, so I'm making a guess here. This book started out so good and interesting. It is set in a near future. I want to say near future. So they refer to 2025 as being in the past, but they also have a reference to somebody's grandmother who's 95, but whose family had lived through World War II, so it can't be that much further than 2025. They also keep referring to the pandemic as something that seems like it wasn't super long ago. It isn't in the past, but it's not way in the past. So, okay, it's set in New York. The main character has no name. He's the narrator, and he's a crypto oracle. It's a Bitcoin cryptocurrency cyberspace kind of story in which the main character is an oracle. It's the book goes on to explain all the stuff because it's written by a Cornell professor whose whole thing is this world of Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, smart contracts, rogue contracts, things like that. Things that were... So the book does a really good job of explaining that stuff, but a lot of times the book also just feels like a lecture given by a Cornell professor about these things. The story itself is this character gets an assassination contract put out on him in cyberspace, and he's trying to find a way to stop it, break it, whatever, which is apparently very hard. But if you were to boil this book down to the lowest common denominator of story, it is about a guy who a computer has been turned on And he is desperately trying to figure out how to turn off this computer, okay? Like, he can't do it. It's, like, really hard to turn off. You need the right people. You need to find out who turned the computer on in the first place and then figure out how to get them to turn it off again. Like, that is basically this story. There is a kidnapping. There is an earthquake at some point. Like, there's stuff going on, but most of this book is lectures about how the cyber stuff works. The main character having conversations either with other computer people or with FBI people about what he can do to stop this contract from, like, being, like, because there's, like, a time window. It's put out into cyberspace, but it doesn't actually go into effect for, like, so many days or something. So he's got, like, this window of time to get the contract stopped, I guess. Okay. So he's trying to basically not get assassinated. As soon as there's a bounty on his head, then, you know, anyway. And so he's like, he has these conversations, then he'll go try something else on his computer, and then that doesn't work, and he goes, has a conversation with someone else, and all of this is embedded in, like, a pseudo, like, I wanted this to be a little more Dan Brown-esque, like, because there's the group that's put out the contract. They're called the Delphians. They're basically, like, worshippers of Apollo. You know, they're kind of attached to Delphi, right? Like the site of Apollo's ancient oracle. And yeah, that kind of, there's like a side, I don't want to say a sidecar of sorts, in which artifacts, ancient Greek artifacts, are, you know, they're on the black market or something. I don't know. I wanted this to be more interesting than it ended up being. Like, I felt like there was potential here. But the main character, because he's so technical, he's very dry, and because he's our narrator, everything is told just very almost tonelessly. Like, the kidnapping is not actually that exciting. The earthquake isn't that exciting. Like, I feel like we should have had more emotion from that, and we just kind of get nothing. And he talks many times about really wanting to keep his pride in the face of this French FBI agent. She's French, but she works for the FBI. It's the thing. But anyway, but if I was supposed to believe there was any kind of romantic tension there wasn't, because, again, this guy doesn't emote and the writing doesn't give us anything to work with, so I just kind of didn't care about any of the relationships involved in this. And the solution to the problem ends up being underwhelming as well. They don't even introduce kind of the Professor Moriarty character until the very end of the book. It would have been way more interesting if he, like, was looking for the one guy and then had to outwit the one guy. That would have been way more interesting. But instead, we spend most of the book just kind of waffling around, trying to figure out how to break this, you know, cyberspace contract that supposedly is unbreakable. The code is so good, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's just hard to make that kind of thing interesting. You need some real world stuff happening. The kidnapping plot's a total, like, red herring. It doesn't even end up going anywhere. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think there are a lot of different ways this could have been better. But as it was, I mean, I went in thinking it was going to be at least 4 stars. I gave it 3, but I still feel like that's a little bit generous at the end of the day, because by the middle of the book, I was skimming big chunks just trying to find the story instead of all the lectures about how things work, because I was like, at this point, I don't need to know this much about it. I get that it probably matters to the story, but at this point, I just want to see who the Delphians are and, like, what the actual answer is. It's clear he lives because he's narrating the story, and he even at some point has a line like, this might have been what saved my life or something, and I'm like, well, yeah, clearly you didn't die, so clearly you're either in hiding while this contract is active, or you were able to stop the contract. I don't know. It could have been better. It could have been better. It's a little dry and technical, and it isn't the fast-paced, heart-pounding kind of thriller, techno thriller that I had anticipated. I really thought that whole Apollo Delphi angle was going to be interesting, and it just wasn't. It just, at the end of the day, like, the whole art thing too was just like, yeah, it was almost like they wanted a Dan Brown, Indiana Jones kind of thing, but it just didn't have enough action or, interest to live up to those kinds of stories. But that's just me. It's got like 4 stars on Goodreads, like, so, and like I said, I gave it 3. It was, I don't know. It might be more like a 2.5, but it wasn't like terrible. I mean, it's pretty well written. It's just that this character is not engaged in a way like that you can invest in him, because you don't get any feeling from him, because he's just so technical and he's so detached in a lot of ways. And even like his relationship with the person at his work that he's supposed to be mentoring is kind of, it's just not. I think I'm supposed to believe they're friends or they're close in some way, but there are times when he thinks she's betrayed him, but again, you just don't get any feeling from it. Like, I don't know. It just fell flat for me. So anyway, those are the books there's one book I've read and one that I DNF'd, I guess, but I picked up Argyle, yes, the book from the movie, but the book is actually just a spy thriller. It is not the story of the movie. So that is what I'll be reading, if I end up reading it all on this vacation. A lot of times I bring a book on vacation and I don't end up reading anything, because we're going to be at amusement parks each day, so we're probably just going to come back exhausted and collapse. But I'll bring the book just in case. And yeah, that's it for now. If you've read either of these books, let me know your thoughts. If you can think of books I might like more, that these didn't quite do it. So if there are books you think are kind of like this but better, let me know that too. I'm always on the lookout. And until next time, take care.